So let me introduce Amanda Dodd for you. Amanda came to NATH, gosh, I don't know, a few years ago. And she's going to talk to us today about quantum healing hypnosis, exploring higher consciousness. She is a transpersonal clinical hypnotherapist and coach who helps clients break through challenges, create new choices, and move forward with exciting new life changes. Her specialties are trauma healing, personal and spiritual development. She's going to talk to us about what is quantum healing hypnosis and how it differs from past life regression. And so without further ado, she is also new on our board. She is our new graphics designer tech on our board, and I'm very excited to have her. She's also my various and sundry assistant at times. She comes with me to different hypnosis conferences and things, and I appreciate Amanda. She's pretty amazing, actually. Get to know her. And so are all of our other speakers. So, Amanda, over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate you, just about to have me on the verge of tears as I'm starting. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. And apologies for my dogs. They're getting resettled. The little ones just woke up from a nap. So my cumulative stress is in the shape of a pug. If you haven't had one, they come with a whole box of pleasures. So I'm going to be applying some of the skills that we learned today from our two beautiful previous speakers. And we're also going to begin to shift gears. So that being said, start to drop in and become very present, because we've been talking about some challenging things. And for some of us, that could mean that our body is activated. So that being said, nice, long, deep inhale, filling up that belly space all the way up to the collarbones now. As you come to fill to completion, allow the exhale to be longer and slower, and go for a complete empty. One more at your own pace. Really feel and bring your awareness to your body now. As you begin to drop in, recognize those subtle feelings of home, of stillness. And it's just that simple. So, show of hands. Who here is familiar with QHHT? I see one, I see two. Come on, don't be shy. Who are my QHHT people? There's another. Okay, beautiful. So we have a few. And I realize that's not a large number here. So who are my past life regressionists? Put QHHT to shame. Let's get both hands up. Okay, we have a little more. Awesome. Well, being that not all of us know QHHT, I'm going to stop calling it that in a moment. It is quantum healing hypnosis technique. It is Dolores Cannon's signature technique, the one that she premised her beautiful, long-standing career on. And I am an immense fan. Puppy for sale? Anybody? Any takers? No? I can't blame you. So what makes Dolores's beautiful signature technique different? We go into various phases of past life regression, except they are not always past lives. Sometimes they are current, sometimes they're parallel, sometimes they're future. We can go into instances of the quantum. And for me, that's what quantum really is. It's that we're traveling anywhere through time, through space, and it's giving the client more options to explore. Now, I came to this a bit later in the game. I was already a clinical hypnotherapist when I began. And like many people, I sought out to solve problems that made sense to me, that were a little more logical. I've got a naturally skeptical mind. So along the way, I've had to prove some things to myself. And along the way, I've had to readjust and rewrite my understanding, my expectations, and my beliefs. It's been a journey. I began Past Life Regression as part of my certification. And initially I thought, I have enough with this lifetime. Why would I want to bother exploring any others? My plate is full. I'm good. Thank you. And what I came to learn was I could probably be the poster child for past life regression, because every time I have a challenge, that seems to be where I go to resolve it. And so ultimately, it's just like, wow, I never imagined this would become this big a part of my life. So I finished SWIHA probably in about 2018, a huge fan. I've taken lots of programs there. Again, I could be the poster child for that too. If you haven't, I recommend exploring them. Their certification programs are good, as are the ones from NATH. I'm loving everything I'm finding. Very good stuff here. So what had happened was I had experience. An experience then began to prompt me to open my mind, to explore even more. That doesn't sound like a huge thing, but I was already a medium from being a small child. I have memories from 2 and 3 years old of angels, of loved ones crossed over. My mind was fairly open, I thought. How much wider does it have to go? Truly. And that's what's, just amazing about this. So I started QHHT last June. And I've completed my initial round for certification, and I'm now officially a practitioner. And what I want to tell you about is the journey. So with Dolores's method, we go through various scenes. Some of those scenes are pre-human lives. Some of those scenes are anywhere through time, through space. And if you're along for the ride, walk in with no judgment, no expectation. I've had the pleasure of encountering the most fascinating clients, the most amazing stories. One of my absolute favorite clients who really woke me up to, okay, this is bigger than I've been giving it credit for, was a client who at one point felt as though people were deeming her as shallow. They were deeming her as not being very deep. Wouldn't you know that one of her experiences, she is the ocean, the entire ocean. She can feel the vastness. She can feel the depth. She can feel all of the life brimming and flowing within her. And I thought it was just the most beautiful metaphor, whether it's real or not, how poignant, how appropriate. And so at that moment, it's like, well, I don't know what's real for you. What I do know is, how did it feel to be in that state of expansion? Because in that moment, you were essentially universe. You were essentially source. Astounding. So through those experiences, after there is an amazing phase with QHHT that's a little bit different, where we then begin to expand into dialogue with the higher self. Now, I had begun to dabble on my own and experienced this with clients before QHHT, but after the training, I've learned so much. And part of that is your higher self, that higher consciousness. It is as unique as you are as a person, as your clients are as people. And I wouldn't be who I am and have changed how I have had I not had some of my own experiences too. So like I told you, I've got that skeptical mind. I like things that I can understand. I like the tangible. I'm a little guilty. And so I wanted to seek out some practitioners and have an exchange so I could have my own experience to know, what does it look like to touch the higher self? What does it feel like? Am I going to be so deep into trance that I'm not going to remember this? And I will say that that differs. I've had clients who are somnambulistic, who have no memory. And then I have other clients who are like me, who stay conscious for the whole ride. And we're just very aware and heightened in the shift. So when I say heightened in the shift, for me, when I had that experience, what I was aware of was that part of myself took a back seat and it felt just below the surface. My physical body actually felt a little heavier, a little different. And so as I was working with this lovely practitioner, she begins to go into my questions. What do I want to know from the higher self? Because for a lot of this isn't a daily dialogue that we're having. So it's a really unique opportunity to dive in and say, hey, what was I supposed to learn here? Did I do it right? And is there more? Let me know, because yikes, life can be tough sometimes. And so one of my questions was, I'd been having immense knee pain to the point where I couldn't bend down and get back up. And by that point, I was only 39 years old. So it's like, please tell me this isn't, arthritis or something setting in, like what's happening for me. And so we get to the point of higher self. And wouldn't you know, my higher self seems to have a bit of sarcastic sass to it. So I get this sensation of rolling my eyes, and this exasperated sigh comes out of my mouth and says, she needs to give up soft cheeses. Now, I don't know about you, but cheese is my greatest indulgence in this life, and I will throw anything and anything under the bus before cheese. So in the back, I'm hearing the conscious mind saying, oh, this is a whole wad of it. Forget it. I'm not buying into this for a second, and I'm going to keep enjoying cheese. Well, after the session, other things had gone well and had really begun to prove themselves. And so I thought, okay, the pain is enough. I yield. I'm done. Let me come off some of the cheese. You best believe I researched. Now I know which are hard cheese and which are soft. And I'm buying some hard cheese for that indulgence. And after that, after about a week and a half, the pain was gone. And that for me was like, wow, okay. So not only did I have this higher self come through, have a very fascinating personality, but also it knew things that consciously I did not know and that I could not explain, and that were poignant and on point for my life. That's when I knew there was more to this, to touching that higher self, that higher expression. And it wowed me. And since then, it's been such an incredible journey and such an honor to work with each and every client and see as they're growing and as they're changing. So I am going to be watching the chat. If you've got questions, you're welcome to ask, and I'll try to keep up. I love for this to be more of a dialogue. I love to connect with each of you and see your beautiful faces. So the fascinating thing for me has also been not just experiencing higher self in its pure raw form, but also witnessing other people. And so for some, you really do see the whole gamut of personality come through. One male client that I absolutely love to work with had a very terse, very on the point and no detail kind of higher self, much to both of our surprise. And he in real life is very much opposite. He is very much a talker. When you get him going, he's got a whole story that he's going to bring up, and it's going to yield into 3 and 4 different memories. So it can be very different and unexpected and always wonderfully surprising. Now, is this the same experience for everybody? It can shift, it can change. For a lot of people, the vast amount of learning comes through the past life regression part. I hate to call it past life regression because, again, we can go anywhere through time, through space, including to other planets, other places. One of my clients had never felt at home in her body on Earth. She never felt like she was human or belonged here, and she couldn't quite pinpoint it. And of course, wouldn't you know, she ended up being one of the first ET experiences that I got to facilitate for. And it was exactly right. And so when she began to ask higher self, why am I here? What have I come to do? What we learned was she had actually come from the future. She'd sent herself here now as a bodhisattva. That's not a word that she knew. She came to be part of raising the human collective. She came to be a space holder for pain. Before that session, she was telling herself that she was bad luck, that horrible things happened around her. And that wasn't the case. She was meant to be a container for more compassion for people who might not have had a wealth of love or support in their most difficult moments to come through her. Can you imagine how that's changed her life? One thing I always say with hypnosis is our clients, it's like playing the lottery. They always win. We never know how, and we don't know how much. Come to work with this client a month later, she's told me that she's lost this condition that she'd had, and I don't have a name for it, but she would visibly sweat and it would run down her arm. She could never explain it. This is the same lady who experienced being the ocean, an excess of water. How interesting. Now, she, again, because this healing is so subtle, she didn't have the awareness that it had changed. It had been about a month since the session, and it was her stepmother who pointed out, hey, you're not sweating anymore. What's happened? All she could say was, I've been doing hypnosis. Huh, imagine that. She also let go of IBS. She also let go of her soda addiction. This same client was working in a really difficult environment, and for her privacy and for gentleness, I'm not going to say exactly what, but it was a very hard industry that she was caught up in, and she didn't feel like she could get out. She didn't feel safe enough. She got out. She not only got out, she's found her expression. She knows who she is, and she knows how she's here to serve. Her entire life has turned around, and that was after one session. Like Linda said, a lot of us have a different approach when it comes to interviewing. So as NATH teaches, so does Dolores Cannon teach that the interview is longer. So some of these sessions can begin with a 2-3 hour interview even. And then it typically follows with a solid 2 hours in hypnotherapy. And then there's some time after for the client to kind of unpack and explore and deliberate the fascinating things that have come up, the parallels, the surprises. So I found it amazing, for one, that here she had problems like IBS, she had problems like anxiety, not fitting in, and then the whole sweating thing. And she'd had experiences in her session, in her regression, and through the higher self that just brought it all home, connected it all together, and made it super clear. Whether we choose to believe these things or not, again, that is entirely up to you, as it is your journey. What I do recommend is, if you're going through these, if you're facilitating this work, I'm appealing to you to have your own sessions, have your own experiences, because you're going to learn the most there. So again, because I've got that skeptical mind, I had a different session. And that time before the session happened, I'd had a dream. And the dream was, now again, I've had to open my beliefs. I've had to consider some things. The dream was, I woke up and I saw a tall being, and it looked like a lioness type female, but she had my eyes, and I found that incredibly weird. And I was kind of lucid dreaming. And so I'm looking over to the right side of the bed and I'm thinking, oh, that's fun. Okay. I become aware of a presence on the left side of the bed, and I look over and I see a tall, bald blue ET. She also has my eyes, and I'm thinking, okay, what's the gag here? Like, what is this about? And so as I look over and I'm trying to discern, wow, this is one heck of a dream. What did I eat before sleep? She looks at me and she says, oh, you are her, she is you, and I am you, and you are me. And I'm thinking, okay, that's a ride. I'm done. I'd like to get off now. Thank you. Coming back to that clinical logical mind. Well, of course, when I had my QHHT session a week later, the first past life to come up is these big furry feet in the sand. And I tell the subconscious mind, no way in hell. You show me literally anything else, I'm not doing this. And of course, the subconscious mind, it listens, it delivers. There's always a continual conversation happening. And so the subconscious mind said, okay, you want a plain vanilla life? I've got one for you here. We'll go explore this. And that one was apt to some things that I was dealing with too. We process that. We come to the second one. There I am in the sand again. And I'm thinking, okay, technically this is your third time coming around. This must be good. You must have something you want to share. And sure enough, as we explore, I'm then becoming very aware of, okay, not only is this a humanoid type life, but this also has some very current life things for me. So on this journey, what else I have discovered is that past lives can come through and they can feel like an emotional or a PTSD flashback. This is a personal awareness. From the time that I've been a little girl, I have always had an unexplained phobia of snakes. I didn't have this life explanation for it. What I did have was moments where my spouse, being the most patient man in the world, would catch me waking up out of bed and flipping through the sheets, desperately looking for snakes in my bed. And aside from being very embarrassed and apologizing for being a crazy person, I had no explanation as to what was happening. And so flashing back to that lioness in my bedroom and then the lioness in my past life, what I had learned was that in that life, she was a priestess. She worked in a temple. She empowered and healed a great deal of people. I saw a line around the temple, and she would empower those who had no voice. I was so moved. She would heal the servants, the slaves, and this also caught attention of people who were then suffering as a result of all these empowered people running around. And so that had made some enemies. And as that life came to a close, what I learned was two things. My spouse was there. He was a protector, and he was my guardian. He was meant to keep me safe. The second thing was that I had died by snakes. There was a large basket left in the room, and I remember a 4-poster bed, and I was curious about the basket, and I didn't think to ask. It was uncommon for people to leave gifts and tokens. I had gone over, I'd lifted the lid, and wouldn't you know, full of snakes, the venomous kind. In shock, I knocked it over. I run to the bed, and I'm hiding in the bed trying to avoid snakes. Snakes can climb. I died to the bites. So this would explain snakes in the bed. I finally got it. It finally clicked. Moreover, I found that there are actually a species of cat person. There are a couple of explanations. One are the Hathors. The Hathors are Venetian. They come through on Earth to bring compassion, unbridled love, and self-acceptance. And that resonated with me. So if you get a chance, explore that. Also, there was experimentation on Atlantis. So I had some Atlantean roots in that lifetime, and I had fled to Egypt for safety. What I knew next was within a couple of days, I was outside in the backyard barefoot watching the dogs run. When my spouse came over and said, "Are you okay? You're out here barefoot." I looked down. I remembered the multiple times before that I would not have been barefoot out there. I would have been way too worried. I've been watching the ground, scanning, just hypervigilant. And I remember having the thought, if they're snakes, they'll move. They're not the Egypt kind. I'm okay. And it was that subtle. And that's what the power of this really is. When we get to touch transcendence, when we get to touch that higher self, that expanded knowing, we get so much more than we know about ourselves, than we know about the world. And it changes us fundamentally in the most beautiful and fascinating way. So I do recommend that you have your own experiences, as many as you can, whether you're a practitioner or not, and find the ways that you've been having higher consciousness speak to you. Because like I said, for me, I didn't know when I was waking up in the middle of the night, rifling through the sheets looking for snakes. I didn't know that wasn't a this life thing. I didn't know I wasn't crazy, to be honest. That was a legit question at the time. And so you don't know what you don't know until you explore and you allow Source to come in and to be your guide through this. So another fun, fascinating story. And for those of you who do past life regression, you already know that it's soft, it's gentle, it's easy, and it's so subtle that sometimes clients miss it. But I actually had a client have an immediate shift with past life regression and QHHT. She had come in because other people had sessions and she was curious. She wanted to know more. One thing she didn't think she would be able to resolve or address was that she'd had a lifelong fear of water, but no memory as to why. It was so much that she avoided any kind of vacation, any kind of enjoyment. She didn't even really take a bath. The level of discomfort was that big. So, of course, we hop into hypnosis. And what we find is this life memory that comes forward, where she's about 3 years old, and her older brothers, who are about 7 and 9, are babysitting. And there's no one really available in terms of an adult. She doesn't know how to swim. And she can recall feeling that anxiety climbing down the pool ladder. She's aware that she's nervous and it's a little bit scary. And of course, you know, little boys not knowing any different, they encourage her to jump on in the pool, that it's going to be fun. And then she can remember seeing the water several feet above her head and feeling terror take her body. Thankfully, older brothers popped her out of the pool. They were able to resuscitate her. She ended up being okay. She got to wear her favorite dress after, and they bribed her with a popsicle not to tell mom and dad. By the time we were done that, we got to the higher self. We explored another past life. She had one as a sailor where she'd also passed away in water. That's 2. As we get to the higher self, okay, why are you showing her this? What do you need her to know? That was then, and this is now, and it's safe. She can enjoy water. And by the way, she's been overworking. She should take a cruise. She's long overdue. My client went on her first cruise, and there's been no looking back. She loves it. She's able to enjoy water finally, fully, and completely. It doesn't always have to make sense when we get the insights from the higher self, but we do need to give it a chance. Yes, Linda.
We had a question on our chat, Amanda. I don't know if you could see that or not, but I thought it was a good question for you too, as you're speaking.
Okay, so Lillian, when we are talking with the higher self, to whom are we speaking? That is a fantastic question. You've got about 3, so let me start with that one. There are multiple theories, and I'm afraid that we might not know until we actually get to pass on. The fun thing about past life regression and QHHT is that we can go anywhere, anytime. Now, one theory, if you look at life between lives, is that we only incarnate with a portion of the soul here. There is negotiation in our pre-birth planning of how much do I need and how much stays behind and how much is allocated to other projects and things, like maybe parallel lives or a portion that needs to remain behind because it's still healing. So with that, we know that it is possible that we are speaking to ourself, that the higher self is actually a portion of our soul that did not incarnate with us. And I've also had other clients who've spoken to things who have been a little bit higher consciousness even still. I know we're not supposed to regress family members. My spouse is an excellent guinea pig and he's been there from day one. So I'm not going to lie, I work on my spouse. And oftentimes it's me or no one. He won't go see anyone. And so I'll never forget the first time we brought through his higher self. My spouse is not a particularly spiritual man. He's military, he's very left-brained. He spends a lot of time in that side of the brain, and that's just how he is. But he humors me. He was my first experience, and the hair on my arm stood up because as I brought through his higher self, it was very, not authoritative, but there was power behind it, and it was palpable, like you could feel it. And it had answers that my spouse would never have in his foggiest daydreams. And because he's somnambulistic, he had the voice change. And so it was this loud, booming voice that came through. And I promise you, had I had the opportunity to record it, I wish I had, because the lights actually started to flicker within the room. And so in his case, I would say that it was potentially even higher consciousness than just his higher self. And there was an awareness within him, and I've had his permission to share. He has chronic lifelong pain that he's been working with, and he's had a very lonely and alienated life. And he wanted to know, why is that? Why has it been such a rough road? And what we came to find was surprising. The higher self poignantly and quickly let me know he had a life prior where he had allowed others to suffer and possibly enjoyed it. And that is all I will say, was how it closed out that sentence. And it's like, well, okay, I'm not going to refute that. And so he needed to have the experience of suffering in this life. And so we were able to reduce some of his chronic pain, but not all the way down to what I would have preferred. Again, the clients will always get exactly what they need, even when you, the therapist, wants so much more for them. And there has to be a little bit of grace, of surrender, and of acceptance in that, because this is their journey. So that was that first question. Your second one, me as a part of the cosmic energy. How is it divine from divine masters and cosmic consciousness? Oh, I'm in love with these questions. Thank you. So the divine masters, now when we do something like Life Between Lives, and we can go there within QHHT as well, that pre-birth planning stage where we're meeting people in the records, or we're going to the Council of Elders, a lot of those beings have not had a human incarnation. They are at a higher level and experience, and so they have a certain amount of grace, they have a certain amount of time allocated, and they don't always have as much compassion or understanding of how visceral it is when we are here. But they do have larger insights on what it takes to develop a soul, what kind of lessons we might need, and how that planning needs to happen. So there is consciousness that is higher, that has understanding, not necessarily being human, and is just there to help us navigate really exquisitely. I hope that answers it. Let me know if it doesn't. And in terms of cosmic consciousness, well, we are cosmic consciousness. We are not the drop in the ocean. We are the ocean in the drop. That's my favorite Rumi quote. And for me, that is what I feel about consciousness in my explorations so far. The other thing I'm aware of is, again, with the clients getting everything they need and the unexpected twists and turns, is that each life, regardless of who they were, the beliefs that they held, have a very strong role to play in the afterlife they get to explore. And they can have one that is a fundamental religious experience where then they transition on and loved ones come to get them, or they experience a version of heaven. And then we can have another where they're just spiritual and they're aware of that cosmic energy. And I had one client who I called it having a Thanos moment, because it's like she just flipped her fingers and decided to disperse. There was no fancy loved ones coming to get her. There was no flowing into the light or any of that. She just was universe. And so she just became it. And she watched from a distance until she decided her next incarnation was going to be timed. And that was an appropriate place for entry. Any questions so far or thoughts? Have I lost you?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So past life regression, I've learned it, I've dabbled in it, I've done it. It's not something that particularly calls to me as my selective route of healing in this kind of field. And it's still intriguing because all the stories that come up, and regardless if I believe in them or not, if they believe in it, it's reality, and I accept that completely, 100%. And I find it interesting that the stories that are painted after an experience, particularly in regression or really any session, because anything can come up anytime. I always find a way to take what they see and have them discuss it to a point where they're able to relate it back into their life currently. So I think that, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but
I was going to say, I'm feeling lost about what your question is.
yeah, I think that, I don't know, I guess my question is, to get the experience of regression, do you always have to actually do regression?
When you say to get the experience, can you expand on that for a moment?
To get the outcome of what a regression session can potentially give a patient, do you have to actually go through a regression type of?
Yeah. So whether you're going back to the initial sensitizing event, or whether you're going back to through the emotion to the first place that this had occurred, that is regression. You are going to that place where this began. And the interesting thing is that was how past life regression was discovered, was through standard regression. And that's where it got expanded on. And then the same happened with life between lives. They were exploring past life regression. And what they found is they could go through different places in time and in space. Does that answer it?
Thank you. Yeah, because I think I do regression in my sessions. I just never called it regression, but it makes sense. So thank you.
There's some definite standards and practices that you want to have in place. I wouldn't explore it without having a bit of structure to it. So every time you are experiencing regression or you're taking somebody back, we want to affirm that that was then, this is now. We're releasing any oaths, any bonds, any sacraments that were made, any blueprints or effects that could be kind of blending into the now, so that we're having that separation.
Absolutely. Anything that's taken out is replaced. I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So overall, I do highly recommend exploring whether you choose to go on this journey for yourself or whether you choose to work with someone, because beyond just regression, there is something really potent. Puppy for sale. There is something really potent about being able to touch transcendence in this way, to go to these higher realms and to bring back our answers and our solutions. As our previous person who just asked the question, Cecilia, was saying, it becomes real. The brain doesn't know the difference. And that is the main takeaway. And we'd heard that already multiple times today. And so that's why sometimes one of the first things I will do is, especially if I'm doing a group regression, which I do every week, I have them do the lemon suggestibility test. One, because I really find it very fun when they have all these little puckered sour faces, and it brings me just a moment of joy that nobody knows. But also it shows them, look at how your body is responding. I didn't sneak in a fruit basket. There are no lemons here. And yet your physiology is making saliva. It is clenching in the jaw due to the bitterness. It's puckering. It's preparing itself. Your body is always listening, reacting, and adapting. And if that's the biggest thing that you take away from today, then I consider that to be the largest blessing. Imagine the things that you want, that you need, as though they are now, and do them often, because your body doesn't know the difference, and it is your ally. It is going to show up and support you. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes, Linda.
I have a question. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've already talked about it, but I don't think you really addressed it. What's the real difference between somebody, a client talking in a QHHT, and a client just talking in regular regression?
There seems to be, for me, a level of depth of trance because there's a great deal more time. There's a lot more rapport built within the interview section that they really go immensely deeper. And then because we explored the multiple scenes beforehand, it just goes to a whole new place. There's also a very specific technique that I'm not going to share because it's not mine, of bringing that higher consciousness through. And I feel like that technique is really the biggest, most interesting part of it, where we get to then call forward or summon this part of the self and ask these questions. And the questions can take you in all sorts of places, as can the answers. Does that cover it?
Almost. I find it, and I found it fascinating when I did her technique, the QHHT, is that the person comes back and talks to you in third person. Linda needs this. If I'm Amanda, Amanda knows she needs to do this. She needs to do
Sometimes, but in my experience so far, it's not every time. And so I think that also depends on the comfort for the client. Some people don't feel comfortable or ready to relinquish that level of control. The ones who can get the best benefits.
When they're truly speaking almost as that higher self or as that higher power. And we have all the answers within us, as us, through us. And when they come back and speak in the third person, it's like, okay. And they get this sense of, wait a minute, that wasn't me. Well, maybe it was me, but it's not anything I would have ever put together, as Amanda's been talking about. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kathy, did I see your hand up?
Yeah. So this is very interesting to me. And I'm not sure, Linda, if it should go to you or Amanda. You were talking about the higher self coming through as a third person. Did I hear that? Yeah.
So there are times when the client, when we're going to that higher self portion, where the client does take that back seat and higher consciousness comes forward and can be very eloquent and sounds like a separate entity.
Okay, because I speak regularly to my higher self or the Holy Spirit, Holy higher self, same initials, I figure, to HS. And it happened, really, I was opened up unexpectedly after my son died in a bad accident. And he started coming to me. I got into hypnosis after all of that because I saw something that just was shocking in a way, but felt so natural. It was very natural, everything that happened. And he was here with me a lot. And he was like 21. And so that was the age he came through to me at that time. Now when he comes through, which he hardly ever does, but when he has come through, he's like a wise spirit. But anyway, my higher self came through eventually. And it all started coming together, and I really didn't understand it. I went to someone who helped me to understand it, and but anyway. Oh, so the third person was interesting to me. I've never worked too much with clients and their higher selves, especially in hypnosis. That's why I've been away from it for so long, and I'm trying to kind of get more involved in it again. And especially after Linda, I realized she was here in the Cleveland area, and I think that gave me a little push,
Absolutely.
And yeah. But anyway, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's just, I find this is so interesting because I have my own experiences with it, not necessarily with clients as much as with myself.
Yes. So for people who channel and do channeling work and bring through messages, it's also not uncommon that they get insights from a third party or a different perspective. I have one client who's a beautiful channel, and her messages always begin with dear one or little one. So again, it's outside of herself, but it's at that higher love vibration. So it sounds like you are experiencing that. Absolutely. And I'd recommend you keep pursuing it and exploring it.
Okay. I can channel with any spirit
Mhm.
that I want to bring through. I mean, early on, sometimes I had a few sneak in and I learned how to set up my boundaries.
Yeah.
Not that it was bad or anything, but it wasn't what I always wanted, you know.
Understandable. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank
And
you.
I do see an interesting comment here from Joanne. There are people who can read the Akashic records like Edgar Casey, who can speak on past lives for you. And I want to answer to that. And I want to say, yes, absolutely. And also, there is a difference for me. So the way that I equate it and I explain it to clients is, would you want to have someone describe to you what it's like to take a bite of a peach, to tell you that it's grainy, that it's sweet, that there's juice to it? Or would you rather bite the peach and have the full sensory audio video experience? For me, it's the experience that's the most foundational because it's happening within you. And it's that change that happens within you. It's that seeing that brings it to believing, that manifests it into the physical. I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for having me, for allowing me to come on and share. I see another question. Yes, Danielle.
Yes. Hi, thank you so much. I absolutely love all of this. And I fell in love with doing past life regressions after I did a few. And I guess my question would be, because I haven't really dove into the quantum, experience. And I guess I have a question on the length. It seems, it's very long, and I don't know the exact techniques or whatnot, but, and thinking of the past lives and doing that, I'm in my brain thinking, oh, well, what if you did something of the doors? Okay. Like, there's a door that's your past life to go talk to, or something, a situation like that. Does this length have to be 2-3 hours, in your experience, or the techniques? And also another part,
let's answer the first one. Let's answer the first one first before we get lost. So that's a large part of the differentiation between past life regression, doing life between lives, or doing QHHT. QHHT is longer. Dolores Cannon often would say it takes as long as it takes and anything is possible. So she would book only a client a day. And if it took all day, then it took all day. But they would get through that large interview part. That could go as long as 2 to 5 hours in some cases. Now, because of her technique and the way that she does it, yes, it does take that time because you're viewing multiple instances. You're being very efficient. For a lot of people, this is a kind of session that they might not do as much as past life regression. Past life regression, you might be going in for 1 or 2 things that you want to understand and unroot and untangle. Whereas if you're doing QHHT, it's a much expanded version. We want to know a lot more of, why am I having these experiences? What am I needing to learn? Am I growing in the way that my soul wants me to? Where am I off course? Okay. It's a much bigger conversation. So it does take quite a bit more time to explore.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I kind of mixed some modalities too and study shamanic work and just healings and things too. And I found that a couple clients have actually in a session have just, been able to talk to their higher selves in a session through that way too. So I was just curious about that, but it sounds like it's a more comprehensive, like almost like a map of like mapping out different things in your life and or what you want to know here and going back and everything. So thank you.
If anything, those spontaneous occurrences where that's happening for yourself and for your clients is just validation that there is a whole expansive realm and conversation to be had. And QHHT is just a more pointed, we're absolutely going there kind of method.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me just check the chat real quick here. How you get in touch with me. My company is called healingbeyondtrauma.com. So I'm local to the Ohio area currently, just about 45 minutes from Linda, which is close enough to go over and bug her anytime. And although my spouse is military, it is possible that I'll move. So a lot of my sessions are virtual, but I do want you to know that QHHT is done in person currently. That is the recommendation as per Dolores Cannon. And so I respect that because that's her modality. So I do it that way. I see Laura Ramos asking, what is the difference between Life Between Lives and QHHT? Life Between Lives, we are exploring the pre-birth life plan, what lessons you had possibly signed up for, and how the relationships and dynamics that you currently have are helping you navigate them. So if you've had certain experiences and you possibly haven't come to that place of acceptance or surrender yet, you can go in and get that insight of, okay, why would I have this happen in my life? What meaning am I supposed to take from this? What growth am I supposed to take from this? There is a person who I very much admire, and that's Shelley Stockwell. And something that she says that I will always keep with me is, what is your post-traumatic growth? I feel like we tackle a lot of that in Life Between Lives of, okay, I went through this situation, I've not yet found resolve. What's the missing piece? So that we can come to that place of serenity, acceptance, and ability to move forward in the most empowered way possible. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful questions. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Amanda. You're an awesome speaker, and thank you for sharing your QHHT. If you don't mind if I chime in on the LBLT and the QHHT, since I'm a practitioner of both as well, I find that they're very similar. I find that you can get answers either way of whatever you're looking for. For me, and I could be wrong, I find that QHHT is usually looking for maybe one specific answer to something that's happening, and how we can resolve that. Whereas, and it can be much, much broader, don't get me wrong. Life Between Lives, I know when Alan did Life Between Lives on me, I had 3 pages of questions that I wanted answered, right? And you can do the same in QHHT. I think it is a matter of preference. I think it's good to be versed in both, and certified in both, and you do need to be certified in both, because some clients will want QHHT for some reason, and some people will want Life Between Lives. I don't know how else to answer it. And I see Amanda shaking her head. Yes, she agrees with me.
It's
So
client goals. It's what the
Okay.
client needs to learn and experience. So that's how I differentiate where we're going to go.
Okay. Yeah, I love doing the LBL sessions too, even though they're long, but I haven't had a QHHT. So just interested in the differences, or what maybe different clients, if you find you have more drawn for one type of session rather than the other.
I found, and it might have changed since years ago when I took QHHT. I found it is a script. I found that they wanted you to stay within parameters. Amanda's nodding her head. And same with Michael Newton's LBLT, right? Very directed, I want to say. Whereas our NATH LBLT, the reason why Alan and Michael split is Alan wanted to go much more spiritual. Your client's going to go where it goes, and it's okay. And it's an open book, right? And I have emails from Alan and Michael Newton. It's amazing. The first old-fashioned emails, right? About how, because they did teach together at first, but then Michael became so directive. And Alan said, you know what? Not everybody's going to go to every station. And we still use his book, but we go off of his book so much. And the new scripts that we have from some of our trainers, Madonna Kettler and even Marjorie Reynolds, if you took our LBL, they're much broader as far as spirituality and where your client's going to go. We follow the client. Whereas Michael Newton and I felt Dolores Cannon too wants you to direct the client. Does that make sense?
Yes, I remember I went through ARE or the Atlantic, and at first they showed us the script and we're like, and then they said, but you get to diverge. So I appreciate all the clarification. Thank you.
Mhm. Anybody else? Thank you, Amanda. You are always a wealth of information.